It should be live on YouTube. Welcome everybody to another Open RFC call, NPM Open RFC call. Thank you everybody for jumping on today and joining us. Quickly, feel free to add yourselves to the attendees list. Also note, this is a publicly streamed call on YouTube, so be mindful of everything you say. We'll go through some quick introductions, but also want to note this call is run under the Code of Conduct, which can be found, a link can be found in the RFC's GitHub projects, github.com/npm/RFCs, and just be mindful and be respectful throughout the call. The desired outcomes and intentions of this call is just to close the communication gap with the JavaScript community, the Node community, and the NPM community, and hopefully move initiatives, features, and feedback forward, and ideally give the community another opportunity to interface with folks here at NPM. Quickly, I want to give anyone the floor if there's any announcements that anybody has. Feel free now to note that.
Yeah, nothing in scope for this call.
Good. So let's quickly do a round of introductions. We've got a few people, net new people on the call that haven't been before. I'll start. My name is Darcy Clark. I'm the engineering manager for community and open source at NPM. I work with a far number of the folks that are on this call. And then I think we'll go around here. Roy, do you want to pipe up?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Roy. So I work with Darcy in the open source team at NPM.
Cool. Mike?
Hey, everyone. I'm Mike. I also work at NPM on the open source team. Nice to make your acquaintance.
Claudia?
Hello, I'm Claudia, and I also work with Darcy, Roy, and Mike in the open source team.
Isaac?
I'm Isaac. I work with Darcy, Mike, Roy, and Claudia on the open source team, and I'm still working on NPM after a very long time.
This is like a memory game right now. Can you name everybody that came before you? Juan, do you want to
go? Hi, my name is Juan. I live in Berlin. I work at eBay as frontend, and open source I work in Verdashot project, which is an open source registry.
Awesome. Wes?
Hey, everybody. I'm Wes. Work on a bunch of open source things. Been coming to these meetings quite regularly, but also I work at Netflix, and I'm on our InTools team working on build infrastructure stuff these days, which directly is NPM in a lot of cases for us. So, yeah.
Awesome. Brian?
Hi, Brian Boylston. Also spiff on GitHub. Just a freelance developer.
Awesome. Danielle?
Hello, I'm Danielle. I work on the Node platform at Heroku and Salesforce, and I just wanted to see how this goes. I have an open issue from a couple months ago, and wanted to see if I could just talk about it.
Awesome. Dominicus?
Hey all, I'm Dom. I build things for clients at Nearform, and I'm also a member of Node.js package maintenance working group, and that's my primary interest here.
Awesome. Emelia?
Sorry, had to find the unmute button. Hi, I'm Emelia. I work at Quandu, and I'm sort of a Node veteran, but I do a lot of stuff around tooling and developer experience.
Awesome. Roscoe?
Hi, I'm Roscoe. I am not on the open source team, but I am an engineer for NPM. I'm just here because my CTO gave me the invitation. So I'm here to check out what this is all about.
Awesome. And Bernard, I think you're the last one.
Hey, it's Bernard. I'm also an engineer at NPM and received an invite at the TechWord meeting, so I'm here to check it out.
Awesome. Great. So
I think you skipped at least one person. Jordan, maybe?
Oh, Jordan.
Oh, hey.
Sorry. Oh, hi.
Yeah, I'm Jordan. I work at Open Door. I'm on the Node package maintenance working group. I maintain a bunch of NPM packages, and I do a bunch of other things that aren't really related to this call. But so yeah, excited to be here.
Awesome. So I appreciate everybody doing a bit of intro. We won't do that every time. I apologize for stealing some extra time at the beginning here. If you haven't already, feel free to add yourself to the notes doc. And if anybody wants to rearrange or change or add something to the agenda, feel free to let me know now. Otherwise, we'll keep going and start with the first PR RFC number 96, which is public confirmation prompt. And I believe this essentially, this has been brought up before, and we've actually discussed this before, but I want to give maybe Roy the platform to give an update.
Sure. Yeah, this RFC is basically a compilation of like multiple requests we source from the community. It basically boils down on having a confirmation step when publishing your package, so that people can have just a last look at last glance at the files that are going in the package before it's published to the registry, right? It is a kind of experience we already have when we are using a one-time password and you're not providing it at the time you invoke the command. You're going to be poked about it, and it gives you a little time to review the files that are going into the package and even cancel it. So it's kind of a nice experience for the folks that are using it, and it's kind of expanding that to the rest of maintainers that might not be using. And one of the ideas is also we can start poking people about start using two-factor auth if it's not active yet. So it kind of unblocks a lot of possible features there. Yeah, but yeah, that's pretty much it for the idea of the RFC. And I don't think there was much contentious in terms of the comments there.
Jordan, you have your hand raised. Was that just for intros?
No. Yeah, I just was. I mean, maybe this isn't worth talking about in the RFC call, but like, would that prompt also happen in a non-TTY? Like, with two-factor auth, it makes sense that like if you don't provide it up front and you run it like in CI or something, that it errors out. But like, I assume it skips the prompt there too. I haven't tried it. So similarly, I would assume that this confirmation would print the same information, but not actually pause and wait for the prompt on a non-TTY.
Yeah, Isaac gave the idea of just basically having it behave as it behaves right now. In case you are on a CI environment or non-TTY, I think it would make sense to just behave the same, right? Even if you have no control over it.
Well, I mean, I'd still want the output to appear in the logs. I just would want the publish to proceed apace, if that makes sense. Because what happens right now is that I don't get that output unless I have two-factor turned on.
Right.
You get the same output. I mean, it still is going when you run npm install, it's still going to say like these are the files I'm installing. Or sorry, when you run npm publish, it'll say these are the files I'm publishing. It just
maybe I just haven't published a non-two-factor package in a while.
yeah, probably it started doing that after you turned on two-factor auth. Okay. The thing is, like it'll just be like, hey, I'm publishing your I'm publishing your password files. Just wanted to let you know, like, can't stop it. So my concern with this, apart from the headless issue, is just making, maybe we need to like have some thinking around whether this should be opt-in, opt-out, or, opt-in if you don't have, or opt-out if you don't have two-factor auth, or opt-in if you do have two-factor auth, or what. Because what I don't want to do is like, I don't want to actually have this myself when I'm publishing packages. I typically am very restrictive about what I put in my files list. So it's more likely that I'm not publishing something I need than the opposite. And so I would definitely, and I have two-factor auth, but I often kind of set my OTP just right when I run npm publish, so I don't even get that prompt. And it is an efficiency, it is a slowdown. And I worry if we just, there's kind of a alert fatigue that can happen where you just get in the habit of saying yes a lot. So I don't know. My sense is this should probably be either opt-in or opt-in if you have 2FA enabled. And you should certainly be able to just do like -- yes to skip the prompt.
Emelia, you have your hand up, and then I think I have some thoughts as well.
Yeah, for this, I would probably go the way of having it as a general npm rc config file setting. So
it can be anywhere.
If you want, you can enable it. If you don't, it's the behavior as is current. But I would also ask, how does this maybe relate to things like pre-releases and things like that? Is it just simply a setting in order to prevent you accidentally publishing files you did not mean to? Or is it a case of wanting to do a pre-release and sort of publish but don't publish?
No, it's strictly client side. So it's preventing, giving you a last check on the files that are about to leave your local machine.
Okay, in which case I'd probably say npm rc.
Yeah.
Maybe when you initialize npm for the first time, it can ask you, would you like to enable this? And power users can disable it.
Yeah, I have the same thought. That was actually my just what I was gonna suggest. So yeah. So
I mean,
is it,
what power user would not have two-factor turned on and thus already be forced to enter a prompt? Like, who's a power user and would have more friction as a result of an extra prompt from an npm publish?
So when you do npm publish, you can also pass --OTP, I think is the command argument.
Sure.
And skip the OTP prompt.
Yeah, and Isaac just mentioned like -- yes as a way that or something similar.
Right.
So are you just saying that there should be a way on the command line to do that?
I would be inclined to say it's a CLI setting rather than a publish action setting.
Right. So essentially, there's an opt-in. What you're suggesting, Emelia, there is an opt-in to even be prompted in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or perhaps, I mean, we could also structure it as like it's an opt-out unless you have 2FA, in which case then it's an opt-in.
Exactly. I think that's the experience I would expect or assume.
Why should 2FA change the behavior of this feature?
Because then the default is to stop and prompt you anyway. Right. So imagine if it's opt out to be prompted, then I set up 2FA and I type npm publish, and it stops and says, okay, open, enter your 2FA password. And then it stops again and says, do you really want to publish this?
What about doing it the other way around?
I guess it would be the other way around, right? Because it would be, yeah, because it wouldn't know to ask for OTP until it makes one request. So yeah, it would have to be the other way around.
Yeah. So
right.
you'd first get the listing of, would you like to publish this? Here's the, I don't know, the file listing, the manifest, whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it just says, I've put the tarball here, go check it. And then it goes 2FA prompt. Of course, you can disable both. I would possibly err on the side of keeping it disabled by default.
So just opt in for everyone?
And then it's opt-in for everyone that does want it enabled. Maybe do some sort of marketing around it or something to say, hey, actually, we've added this feature if you want to use it. But it's a bit of a change. It's a bit of a change to what the known behavior of npm is. beyond something like adding additional authentication, which I think people get.
Mike, you had your hand up?
Dom was before me.
Oh, sorry.
Two questions then. Okay, so 2FA is on the server side, so the client probably doesn't know it beforehand, right? But that said, shouldn't 2FA be the default at some point sooner rather than later? And also, if this is completely opt-in, then is there real value in it? Because if you're going to have to take action, you may as well go and use something other than NPM, but a wrapper around NPM to do publish something like, or the other tools that allow you to confirm things. Just.
Yeah, I think making it, yeah, so good, really good points. Yeah, 2FA is server side only, so you're right. My thought that we can fork the opt-in, opt-out based on that is to throw that out the window. Then the other question of like, do we make it opt-in or do we make it opt-out? It sounds like everyone's, I'm not hearing any disagreement on like, if it's headless or if you do -- yes, then we just sail on through. The argument for making it opt-in would be just minimizing disruption of existing workflows. The argument for making it opt-out is no matter how much marketing, I mean, if we spent NPM's entire marketing budget on just telling people to set this flag, we would get like 1% of our users to do it. Like it's, there's no amount of marketing we could do to tell people to do that. That is not disruptive to their workflows, right? Like that's the only thing people actually respond to. So, I don't know.
What about doing it as a post install for the next update? So you npm install npm. When you get that version, it prompts you, would you like to enable this feature?
Mike, you had your hand up as well. I'm not sure if you had something.
Yeah, sorry.
It dovetails on that idea. So it was suggested, I don't know if it was in the last RFC or if it's in the current RFC's comments, that npm v7 have this as an opt-in feature, so that if you want this, you must explicitly say like, yes, please, I would like this. And then if you're managing a team of people, you can tell them to sort of update their npm RFCs and such. And then in the next major version bump, we change it from opt-in to opt-out, so that people will have known about this for a period of time and say like, we are now sort of being slightly more strict about this particular thing that you've now known about for a period of time. And it's the same thing, but now you must just sort of say like, I don't actually particularly want this thing, which I think gives people time to sort of update their existing workflows, or sort of quells that thing where it's like, see people say like, you broke my workflow, but it's like, we gave you an amount of time to say like, hey, this is a thing. So it's kind of on you now instead of on us rather. And so I think that satisfies things.
It also
I think dovetails on it.
It gives us time to collect data. I mean, if we make it opt-in in npm 7, that feels like the safest option for me. And then we can see, right? We can get some feedback from folks who are using it. We can start being a little bit noisy and say, this is not going to be like, it's going to prompt you in npm 8, FYI. But there's a lot of avenues open to us then.
Yeah, there's just one concern with making it opt-in is that one of the things that this RFC was trying to address is precisely trying to motivate people and enable 2FA. So the idea was precisely to give the folks that don't have 2FA enable, we will be able to print a warning message or something like, oh, you don't have 2FA. We recommend that to every publisher at NPM. Please do that now, and then point to a link where people can just set it up on the website, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, we can do that separate from this, right?
Yeah.
Separate from the publish prompt.
Just to be mindful of time here, I want to time box the conversation. Wes has his hand up, and then also Mike. Time box this for another 3 minutes, just as we have a lot of other items. So Wes.
Sure. Yeah. I was going to almost say the same thing. It sounds like we should move on just a little bit, because one of the other topics I think blurs the lines here when we start moving into the CI and 2FA stuff And I think to like Rui's point, we want to be pushing people toward these best practices. And I think I'm fully on board with making it opt-in and then making it the default in the future. And the nice thing about making it the default is that we can also take that opportunity to do things like promote enabling 2FA, but also promote just like moving to the staging feature and publishing from CI instead of ever doing the local, which means this feature doesn't touch you, right? So I'm definitely thumbs up for doing it. Definitely thumbs up for making it opt-in to start. And definitely like the future should be nobody's seeing this prompt ever because they've moved on to a nice CI workflow with the staging feature, which we should talk about.
Yeah, I think we addressed all the concerns. I'm happy to move on.
Yeah, and if there's any other feedback, feel free to add to the RFC or the issue itself. So moving on, so PR number 92, RFC 92, add staging workflow for CI and human interoperability. This was an RFC that was kicked off by Daniel on our end, our product person. I'm not sure, Demetrius and Jordan and Isaac, there's been a lot of conversation on this even in the last few days. Wes, you were the last person to comment. Would you like to pick up where things left off?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I think, so on the last call, I was a little bit concerned about the developer experience around this, and I pushed a little bit for people installing from the staging area. On further thought and then having a few discussions with some of my teammates, particularly ones that manage our Artifactory instance, which is our registry proxy. There is some, I think, fairly large problems with some of the stuff I was questioning what, the developer experience around on the last call. So what I'd really like for us to focus on, and I think Jordan had some really good input here in the issue as well, is this is not a way for you to distribute pre-release versions. There is a feature for that. It is pre-release versions and dist tags, right? So if you want somebody to be on a beta, track, have a dist tag called beta and publish pre-release versions and have people couple to that. I think that's going to be a much better workflow, and the install from the staging area to me should be really relegated to a sanity check. And that sanity check is just for the publisher, right? So, and this is where it goes into what Jordan was saying. It has to be auth and it has to be somebody with published rights in order to be able to install from the staged. I think that addition would really create a disincentive for people to couple to it in the like beta channel, beta release type of way. And I think, so I brought up, I think 2 additions, and then I think there was 2 other additions that came out of that we could make. One was it doesn't touch package JSON or package lock when you install from a staging. And I think that resolves my big developer experience concerns before, which were that you do that, then it promotes, then the tarball is gone. So Isaac made a suggestion as a possible solution there, which is just redirecting the tarball. I think that's fine, but I think that again enables people to couple to it as a beta release channel mechanism, which is, I think, totally not the purpose of this, or shouldn't be the purpose of this. Obviously we can disagree on that and have that conversation, but I would definitely put my vote on make that not the point of the staging area. And then the other one was explicitly opting into installing only a single staged version at a time. So that would be making the include staged flag not work on a generic install. It would only be functional when you're installing. So it'd be like npm I -- staged package name at version, right? Or whatever. Yeah, sorry. And so it only work in that context, not in the context of a general, npm install all my packages include staged, because I think that has a bunch of other worrisome qualities. So those are my new points.
Jordan, you have your hand up, and then Isaac, I think you have something as well.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm sure that this RFC came from multiple different use cases and ideas, right? But within the package maintenance working group, the entire purpose of this feature is I want 2-factor on my applications, but I don't want to trust a non-human to publish a thing. How do I do that? And like current workarounds are things like use npm pack and you save the tarball and then you trust a human to download it and publish it later. But that's still more trust than we were comfortable with recommending. So the entire purpose was to be able to make a secret publish from within CI without requiring two-factor. And because it doesn't require a two-factor, it's critical that it be inaccessible to anyone, perhaps who's not an owner, but not just installable. And then later on the web or through the CLI with a two-factor prompt or someplace where a human is involved, the human can essentially promote that or, you know, and make that be the real version. I think it's just like, I was just basically very surprised to see what I see as a total shift in direction for the purpose of this feature to be about what pre-releases already do. You know, if the concern is about version churn, like we can add redirection to pre-releases and make pre-releases more easily unpublishable. Like there's lots of solutions to that, but like that hasn't been necessary so far because you can put a Semver string that includes all the pre-releases, and that's what people generally do when they're doing that. So like, I guess it just feels like the purpose of this has been conflated with some valid pain points people are having with testing multiple tightly coupled packages. And I think that it would be worth evaluating those a little separately.
Sure. Isaac and then Emelia.
So yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about why it is that this is actually a valid use case to use this as a sort of a pre-release channel. Yes, we do have disk tags. You can tag something with, or you can publish something with --tag equals next, and then install that that pre-release version in order to sort of get a user to beta test something for you. And people do that today. One of the points of feedback that I've heard in the Node tooling group and in a couple of other places where we discuss these sorts of things is the problem that the thing that you publish with the pre-release disk tag, when I go, okay, this one looks good, I want to publish it, it's not the exact same artifact, and it never can be. I have to run another npm publish, and I haven't verified that new artifact in context in that environment. So one of the ways that people get around doing that is they don't use a pre-released tag on the version. They just sort of publish it with a different disk tag. So it's, you know, version 2.0, but it's still, you know, tag equals next. And then if there's a problem, I have to bump the patch a bunch of times. Also, if you're installing and you have if I have a pre-release that I want to do, let's say I have a version 2.0 that's on my next disk tag, and I have people who have installed from Next, and now they have, you know, the version range that they're depending on is caret 2.0.0. There's no way for me to publish a pre-release version of 2.01 on the even, you know, in such a way that I can say to a select group of people, hey, pull this specific version, without also hitting everybody else who's already on that disk tag train. And this would basically give them another way to do that. The other thing that is was brought up almost immediately in kind of the context of some of the discussions that we've been having around workspaces and their use in packages like Babel and Lodash and NYC. It's pretty common to want to publish a bunch of packages and then sort of do it almost as a transactional sort of meta publish, right? So I have a new version of Babel. I want to ship everything that's in my Babel mono repo. And if anything fails to publish, or if there's any CI failures in any of them, I want to, like, you know, fix that before I actually make it open and public to the world. So we can do that if it's possible to install. Then, you know, you can actually run your pre-released or sort of staged versions, staged publishes in CI and get that level of confidence, and then know that that's the exact same artifact that's being pushed out into production. The third thing I wanted to mention, just, I mean, this is not, this doesn't really speak to, you know, the goodness or badness of any particular approach, but just like, if we want to get this done in a short amount of time and deliver this value in 2020, having a part of the document which is only available to publishers for gets is really going to throw a monkey wrench in a lot of ACL business logic. So as of today, scoped packages will check your auth, and unscoped packages never do, because they can't be private. So now this would be basically introducing, if we said only publishers can install staged versions, and you have to be auth. Okay, now my CI that's doing this, that's doing the checkout and test of my meta publish has to be auth, which, okay, we can, that's probably reasonable. You're making changes anyway. But on the server side, now that means we have to be checking auth for any URLs that look like a that look like it might be from staging. And I don't know, I'm not convinced that this is actually any kind of security issue, and I'm not convinced that it's even a developer experience issue if staged versions are just, you know, radically deprioritized, right? If we just say like, A, you have to opt in, and B, you're only going to get that version if there's no published version that matches the December range you've given it. And given that, you know, effectively the only way that you can get a staged version is like to explicitly say, this is the one, this is the specific version I want, and I'm including staged. And now if it depends on specific versions, which are also staged, it'll just work and it'll fetch those, because the published version won't be satisfactory.
Yeah.
So as far as the, getting to the last part, the no package lock, and so that I think addresses the explicit single install in a more, somewhat more elegant way, or it gets at the actual use case in a more elegant way without locking out the meta publish use case. The third thing, or the last thing, is the package lock, and this one I feel pretty strongly that if you install something, it should go in your package lock. Like the resolve value should be that URL, and that URL should be something that we can allow you to put in your package lock. And I mean, effectively what you'd be saying is, if I do install -- include staged, then I'm also doing -- no save, right? Like,
yeah. So just be mindful of time. I want to time box this for another 5 minutes. Emelia has had the hand up for a while. Same with Jordan, and then Dom, I think, is after that. So just to time box this for another 5 minutes, as I know there was at least 2 other key points we want to get to in this call today. So Emelia, feel free to go.
Okay, so my hand up, basically, I'm tying into the meta publish here. We had an issue with Learner, which was essentially, if you have some sort of Silic dependency in your Learner package graph, then you would get install errors. No, you would get publish errors because you'd be publishing a package that depends on another package, which depends on yourself, which isn't currently published, or some combination thereof. And the way that we ended up fixing this was to actually sort of abuse dist tags. So it might be worth bringing in the maintainer of Learner for this particular RFC and raising it to them.
Good note. Jordan?
So a few things. You were talking about the use case of like testing all the things together and publishing as a transaction. Staging works for that, whether you can install them or not. The use case for that is people installing from a monorepo. They're publishing from the same SHA. So they don't need to publish one and then test against that and then publish the next one and test against that. The CI test before anything is staged or published is 100% of what they need. all they need at that point is to make sure that all the publishes work. And they may have separate build jobs that test each individual package, but like the way they're already, the only way you can test things in a monorepo is by doing linking and like, you know, solving that in CI unrelated to publishing. So anyone who's got a monorepo has already fixed that. And like, the only thing that totally makes sense here is that they want like to publish 5 packages or 0, like a transaction of packages, but that doesn't require installability. And then as to your point, if you can install it, you can save it. That seems reasonable. I don't have a contradiction to that, but like, I also don't think that these should be installable. I think that like you said earlier about the, you know, if you want to tell certain people to be able to publish things without having it exposed to the people on a certain disk tag, you have infinite disk tags available. Just make a new one. Next 2, next 58. Like, I think that's fine. So I really think it's important that stage things not be installable.
Dom, and then Isaac, I'll give you a chance also to follow up.
Okay, so this feature to second in a way what Wes said and what Jordan said is, to me, it's very important that this feature gets out as soon as possible so that we can get easy 2FA in CI without having to run an extra service as a user. The way I'm looking at it right now is that if in the initial version of the staging area, things are not installable, that does get the feature of 2FA out. And that is a super major benefit to me personally. Whether it stays installable or not installable after it's out, I don't have a strong opinion, but something that I am thinking about is that as soon as it is out, people are going to ask to make it installable. And there will be 2 primary reasons for that. One is that I realize that there's the supposed theory and the way you're meant to do pre-releases and staging things and trial things is to use disk tags and to use pre-tags in Semver. But disk tags are really hard for both the users and the authors, the way I'm thinking about it. They are really hard to grok and to get your mental model around. And pre-suffixes for Semver, there's, in my opinion, they're somewhat easier than disk tags, but they're also non-trivial. And they do have some unexpected consequences, as in Semver sorting and not matching certain ranges. So a lot of people have learned to work around that, but in terms of how easy it is to use the feature, I think the staging area would kill both of these things because it would be so much easier to work with. So yeah, that's that. So like I said, if the initial release allows you to stage things but does not allow you to install them, I would be very, very happy. And then whatever happens next, we can maybe debate later as well.
Yeah, so just being mindful that we are at time here. And I know that when we originally talked about this, we want to flush out in the RFC all the use cases, which may help with the discussion and driving like the intended outcomes of this RFC, which I think needs to get picked up and championed by somebody, I think, internally here, as Daniel is actually no longer with us. But Isaac, I'll give you a chance to rebuttal, and then I think we should move on.
Yeah. So the hold on, I'm just reading what Jordan. So I think that there isn't actually a good way to publish minor or patch versions as a soft publish that won't be automatically installed by everybody using your package. And that's one of the advantages that we'd be able to get by having them in a staging area. What I would say to challenge kind of the objections to making them installable is like, what are the situations in which it would be installed and that is not actually what you would want? Because there's a handful of cases where it would be installed and it is what you want, and it is a much easier workflow than using disk tags and pre-release tags, and a safer and more deterministic and reliable workflow as well. And then let's just like set up the heuristics so that isn't a thing, so the bad thing doesn't happen, right? Like that's actually totally feasible without going the hard step of saying that it's just not installable. which is also technically more challenging.
Okay. I think like there's a lot of conversation to be left said in that in this RFC. Again, I think the use cases that we're all trying to solve for need to be really fleshed out so that we can properly identify whether or not the solution is going to solve for that. And then also potentially we'll trim down. So we'll keep working on and having conversation there. So let's quickly move on. I know that Emelia actually jumped on this call because we were going to bring up RC 93, so standardized based a login mechanism, which also I think ties in a bit with PR 71 verified account linking, although I'll let you speak to that, Emelia, in terms of the PR.
Sure. So the idea behind the standardized browser-based login mechanism is NPM does already feature a standardized browser-based login mechanism, excepting it's in NPM Enterprise only. The reason why this is important, in a nutshell, is what we're looking for is a standardization around this flow. So rather than entering your password into the CLI, you're actually directed as a developer into the browser to log in, which enables better security overall. This then ties into private registries. So for instance, Verdaccio and Artifactory, where if your private registry is set up with, say, GitLab authentication or Google Cloud or whatever it might be, then in order to do OAuth with those, you need a browser-based flow. You can't really do it through predefined tokens. It's a horrible user experience. So this is really just if we want to change the API to be based around, say, OAuth's device credential flow, a device code grant flow, then we can. But I'm also happy with just documenting and standardizing the existing way in the NPM CLI and saying, this is how this works.
Does anybody, Mike, want to go?
I am all for this idea. I just wanted to throw my full support at this. I think we have a few internal dependencies that manage this inside the CLI in terms of like the code paths to get to this particular behavior, and it would be really nice if we were able to get to them and champion them in V7. I think that would be perfect.
Yeah, I have, Emelia, I had brought up some questions on that thread, just more for clarity. The big question is going to be like sort of in the details of like, okay, like how do we decide what this code is, et cetera, et cetera.
Can I comment before we talk?
Go ahead.
Yeah, can I talk just before? I definitely want there to be a flow. I think that was about to get into the details of what that flow looks like. And I wanted to post a link, which I just got like 10 minutes before this, but there is a OAuth spec for browser-based applications, which I think might be pretty applicable to those details. We might want to look at this as opposed to the more traditional OAuth flows, which require you to have a client secret that you actually protect. One of the sort of maybe bigger flaws in the current way is that you can't protect your token from other NPM installs operating on the same machine, right? Like today, if it's in your NPM RC, if you're doing that way, any post-install script can just scrape it, right? I think, if I'm correct, this flow would help us not have those same problems. This is coming from me, who got this link from one of our security team members and hasn't had the time to fully dig it. So, but I just want to lay that out there.
Yeah, so if you, I'll take a look at this, but, and that may shed some light on some of the questions I had raised, but I think I mean, here's the thing, like if a bad guy is on your computer, it's not your computer anymore, right? Like if you have a token anywhere, if you have a secret anywhere that allows you to do anything without like prompting you for a password each time or what have you, then that's a thing that can be scraped and abused. And you know, perfect security is impossible. We raise the bar, whatever. So it may be that we can make things a little bit more hardened. And the device flow, the OAuth 2 device flow, appears to be actually very similar to the Webflow that we have in place, with some like, you know, very sort of surface level details about like which URL you post to and which URL you get to get the response. I think we made our WebAuth the way we expected. It was a little bit more flexible because you basically were given two URLs, one to open in a browser and another to poll on. Whereas this, you have to use the same URL again.
No, so device code flow, you don't actually have to use the same URL. It gives you a URL to poll on, as far as I recall. Basically,
I thought it just gives you a URL to open in a browser.
So it gives you the response gives you a verification URL to open, but when you're actually doing the initialization, the very first step, the client ID, as far as I know, is the URL to poll on, or it's the device code in the response is the thing to poll on.
Right. So
it's a combination of client ID and device code.
Right, but the actual URL endpoint is always, in this implementation, is always /token.
Right, and then it's the body of that request, which is the client ID, the grant type, and the device code from the response.
All of this is very surface level, like, you know, not sort of fundamental differences. It does imply some changes in the implementation, though, and there's already got to be some pretty significant changes to port our existing Webflow into the public registry from how it lives in npm-rc or in npm-e. So I like this. I don't see anything that's like a major blocker. I think there's just kind of some open questions that we need to get answered, and they seem entirely answerable. It's still going to end up with a situation where you have an access token that goes in an npm-rc file, right? And like, so from a security point of view, it's better than having a user enter a password, because there's other things that we can do at login time. And if we have a refresh token, and there's a shorter expiration on the actual access token, maybe there's some additional step we can prompt the user for when it expires. But then, you know, the thing is with a lot of those, you can very easily end up in a state where like, okay, well then where do we put the refresh token? Like that still has to go somewhere, and you can just steal that if the access token expires.
Yeah. I think the benefit of having the refresh token is that then there's actually some logging server side saying, oh, the user has attempted to do this, we've refreshed the token, such that if you get a man-in-the-middle attack on your network and your access token is stolen that way, then the access token only lives for a small amount of time. It's not so much about if your computer gets hacked.
I see. So they would steal the let's say steal the access token, but not the refresh token. Right. And if they did steal both, we could even, you know, every time you refresh, you get a new refresh token. So then if you try to then refresh, it will fail.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. There's some benefits there. There's just some typing to do, you know, some small, simple questions to answer, and then some typing. The server side is going to be the harder part to implement this.
At the end of the day, the picking of the OAuth device code flow was simply, this is something that I knew existed, and it might save a lot of time writing something custom. And it's something that I think can be adopted by other registries and other CLIs.
For sure.
So, for instance, I've had conversations with Jan, with Learner, I think, with NPM, and with Verdaccio. And hopefully we can get everybody to start implementing this. This first step.
Yeah, and doing WebAuthn in general allows us all kinds of benefits, right? Like we could have log in with your GitHub account, with your Google account, with we could say, hey, you're logging in from a new URL, so you have to solve a CAPTCHA, or from a new IP address, so you have to solve a CAPTCHA. Like there's all kinds of really nice things we could do there.
So just to be mindful of time, we have about 3 minutes left. I know that these two, specifically, this is why I put them together, 93 and 71, verified account linking, essentially go together. And there hasn't been much conversation beyond Emelia's comment there. I want to put number 506, bug number 506, that was started by Corey, on our radar, at least to give an update there. Potentially, Isaac, you'll have time to maybe be mindful or give a thoughtful response to NPM, the way that NPM audit right now is identifying packages or outputting packages, and in the case of what seems to be community feedback to how we're placing blame. If maybe as an action item you can just respond there, that would be enough, I think. And just before, since we only have a couple minutes left, I did want to get to PR number 103, which was recently opened by Roy in terms of workspaces. He's been doing work with the community, has poked some folks that are on this call, as well as folks from Lerna and Yarn around the work that we're queuing up to support workspaces in NPM. So Roy, you might, I'll give you the last minute here, so just to at least propose this. And I know that we won't have much time to talk about it, but we can async, have conversations for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely not enough, but at least I'll try to summarize.
Workspaces in 1 minute, go.
Workspaces, basically a better way, a better workflow to work, manage multiple packets, right? That tend to work together. So basically that's what we're trying to propose. Three main implementations. Basically being able to support the configuration that is already there. So mostly being able to support workspace definition that Yarn set up already in order to be for NPM, the CLI to be aware of a workspaces, then being able to install it, right? So we want to be space efficient. So you install most of the things, we'll try to hoist the top, and we're going to link all the packages that are siblings in that workspace, all the sub packages that are already there. Arborists will be aware of them, and we'll just link them around. And things that are used, like pure dApps, they get hoisted and then they get linked into child workspaces. And at last is being able to run multiple commands. So we identified a small list of useful subcommands that most maintainers would like to run across all the workspaces, like being able to run tests across all the nested packages inside a workspace. So basically, that's what we surfaced for this initial workspace RFC.
Awesome. That's a good summary in 1 minute. Well, because we're at time, I appreciate everybody jumping on today. Apologize we got kicked off late, but just want to be mindful that we are at the hour, and want to encourage everybody to come back out in 2 weeks from now and continue to have conversations and propose things to us. Wes, do you have one final announcement? I see your hand up.
So this has happened in the past at least 2 meetings, but we've run quite a bit over. I would like to propose that you make it every week. For a time until we, I mean, if we can't talk about all the topics, then we need more time.
we're not getting through the backlog is what you're saying. Okay, I'll propose in a new thread on the RFC's project, a new issue and poll for the time and day, and we'll try to queue this up to be a weekly meeting for sure. I agree, we're not getting through the backlog for sure. So, and if folks are finding this useful, then that's actually really exciting for us on our end, and I appreciate that. So
yeah, and I want to talk about workspaces.
You know, it might be worth maybe every other week in the off weeks, we pick one like particularly juicy or complicated RFC that would otherwise kind of
Deep
dominate
dive.
the entire time, and just do deep dive on that one. Like,
Okay.
because if we just take this whole meeting to only talk about workspaces, like that's going to be really boring to anybody who doesn't care about that. But we could easily do that. So maybe next week we just talk about workspaces.
Sure, I'll try to set up a out of band call specifically for, let's say, workspaces, and again, give everybody the opportunity to join still. So
yeah, it was staged publishes this time around, right? Like, and that's why we didn't have time for anything else. Maybe that should also kind of a off week deep dive.
Sure.
I like that idea.
I'll organize. I will try to organize for sure. Again, appreciate it, everybody jumping on and discussion, and hopefully see you in the next call. Thanks.